Robert, you're looking good. What's the good word?
Well, I see you're famous enough now to get your first national TV hit piece.
Yeah, I said they're going to issue the correction. They're going to do it. I'm so neurotic, Robert. I called them out on it. I was like, has there ever been one other video that's been pulled? I'm thinking of like, no, because I made such a stink over that one. And have I ever been challenged by Facebook? No, because I would have made a stink about that too. But yeah, it wasn't such a bad hit piece to me. I just think they don't appreciate it. Was the best advertising for Rumble imaginable. Did you see it by any chance?
Yeah.
Classic. Robert, what is the good word? First of all, before we get started, what's in you? What do you got in your fingers? And what's the book over your shoulder?
Oh, it's a special edition Monte Cristo cigar, and that's the what's the exact title? Yeah, The Contours of American History by William Appleman Williams. A good description of American foreign policy up until 1950s or so.
Amazing. Well, look, I mean, the world is just fascinated by the awfulness that's going on in Canada. And I just saw a chat that said rumors are that the RCMP are being paid $4,000 a day. They're being paid time and a half or whatever, emergency hazard pay. There's a lot of them too, but I won't get into that. All that I can say is that I do believe they're going to get sued as of tomorrow for what they've done over the weekend from some people. I worked for the RCMP and CSIS for 35 years to protect Canadians from threats to democracy. Our government treats our citizens in a peaceful demonstration worse like scum or terrorists, 100%. Robert, what's your take? I mean, what you're looking at this from the States. What do people say out in the States?
I think it was, from a purely political perspective, theatrical perspective, it was a mistake by Trudeau. They went in too hard. They went in too heavy. You don't bring a SWAT team to that kind of event. You don't bring troops, troop-like cops to that event, and you don't bring the Mounties on their horses to that event. And the iconic image that will be forever etched into stone will be that grandma getting run over by a horse. Because however they got that photo from above, even the New York Times put it towards the front of their coverage. That's even the New York Times, who doesn't want to cover it from a sympathetic perspective. And so it's just too bad of an image. I mean, it's not quite, but still iconic in the same manner that the man in front of the tank in Tiananmen Square was. I mean, it's probably one of the most dramatic images of police abuse of power over protesters that you could imagine. And the sloppiness, carelessness of how they handled it. I mean, how they've handled it all the way through, but it will forever stain the reputation and resume and history of Trudeau.
And now there was a Fox News journalist who tweeted out, this was Friday night, reports that the woman died. I said, if this is true, it's going to be squarely on Justin Trudeau. And then someone said to me, well, why don't you just wait and see? And I said, one way or the other. If the woman died, and I'm going to get to, she didn't die, just so nobody's worried. One way or the other, if she did die, this is a literal murder on Justin Trudeau's hands. And if she didn't, he got away by the skin of his teeth, because the difference between dying and not dying when a 2,000-pound horse is stomping on any part of your body is a matter of luck and not a matter of skill. So whether or not she died doesn't change anything as to how egregious it was to strut 8 horses in minus 16 temperature when the roads are icy in a crowded protest. It's negligence. It's criminal negligence. Now, the woman, to add sweet cherry to this outrageous abusive pie, is Indigenous. She's an elderly Indigenous woman. She apparently dislocated her shoulder. She's out of hospital now. And they filed an SIU, I think it's a special investigative unit, into the injury, where initially the Ottawa police said no one was injured. And then they said, oh yeah, there was an incident when someone threw a bike at a horse. These effing idiots they're being recorded 24/7. It's minus 16 on icy streets. No one's bringing a bike to the protest. The woman had a walker, and that's what they were alleging was the bike. So she's out, she lived. And, by the skin of his teeth, Justin Trudeau did not have an actual death on his hands. But yeah, Robert, that image, the entire scene captured on video, these arrogant, militaristic police strutting through a crowd with 8 2,000-pound horses with seemingly no control over them. And then people want to blame the protesters? What else, Robert? Even the media in the U.S., I mean, Fox News has been all over Canada, but other outlets in the States, have they been critical?
I mean, they've tried to minimize the coverage, but that was too visually symbolic to ignore. And that's the problem. I mean, visuals will tell a much bigger, broader, longer story than the written word will. And they kind of etch themselves in stone, in my view. And so Canada was mostly for a lot of these mandates before the trucker convoys, but even the Canadian polls have shown people not supporting this kind of reaction. It's just not a Canadian kind of reaction. It's not, I get Trudeau couldn't wait to unleash his emergency powers. And Freeland, dumb enough to go out and say, we're going to make all these permanent as soon as we can. My prediction is that even the very Trudeau sympathetic parliament may vote this down on tomorrow. And that will be doubly embarrassing and humiliating. So I think ultimately the truckers achieved most of what they set out for, to expose the raw power of the state against civil protests. They did that just with that visual imagery, that the state is relying upon power, not persuasion, for what it's doing. It's relying on its monopoly on the use of force, legal monopoly on the use of force, particularly in Canada, rather than the force of law. And on top of that, of course, many of the jurisdictions up there scrapped their vaccine passports or their intentions to tax people based on their vaccination status, and even some of their vaccine mandates. And parts of Europe and the United States did the same. Very liberal jurisdictions in Boston, in other parts of the country have retracted their vaccine passports or vaccine mandates, as the case may be. A few places are still holding on. But the trucker convoy, I think, worked out far more than probably they thought when they initially set out to hop in the rig and head up to Ottawa.